Hi everyone, I'm Dora Kermay, author, performance coach, and former professional table tennis player. Welcome to the Game Sat Match podcast. Have you ever wondered how top performers stay composed and deliver under pressure? What's their secret? In this episode, I'm joined by mental performance coach Michael Huber, who specializes in working with young athletes. We are talking about mental game calm, how athletes and parents can stay cool under pressure, plus simple proven strategies to handle game day challenges and perform at their best. Hi Mike, very nice to co-hosting together. I'm very excited and I'm very happy that we could make this happen. When parents come to you worried about their child nerves, what do you notice they are most afraid of? The anxiety itself or what it might mean long term?
Yeah, I think first of all, just like with athletes, I think every parent is different. But I think in terms of what I see, I think it's more the long term, right? We don't want this to become an ongoing problem that gets cemented. We want to address it as quickly as possible so that we want to be able to learn how to manage it so that it doesn't become a challenge for our child down the road. We want to try to nip that in the bud, right? But I think it's also for parents, they're uncomfortable with their ability to help their child, right? They're nervous about their child's nerves. What if I can't help them? What if this gets worse? What if they're always this way? So they really want to get that guidance from somebody like us who comes in and says, hey, here are some ways to manage this so that they can get not only that short-term relief and comfort and get the information they need, but also, like you said, not let it become a long-term issue. So from your experience, right, as an athlete, what was your experience with that when you were younger and you were competing in terms of how your family or your parents' interactions with you, how did that affect you and your nerves?
Oh, thank you for the question. It's a great question. Yeah, so as a young athlete, my parents basically didn't really put any pressure on me regarding sports. So I have to say that when I started playing, I really played for myself. And it was a great experience. And even the first time I was in a European Championship and we played in the final and the coach told me I'm playing, I had to call up my parents to come to the tournament. So there was no pressure at the beginning. So I really played for myself and it makes a big difference. But I also seen some other parents, they were really involved in it. And that can definitely have an extra pressure for the athlete. And it happens unconsciously. So I would say it's very, very important to give self-awareness for parents, the way they communicate and the way they engage. And I also seen many times self-fulfilling prophecy, not self-fulfilling prophecy, but basically parents really want to turn their former passion, do the same with their kids. And it's good to be aware of that. And regarding self-fulfilling prophecy, I mentioned that it's also very important how parents believe in their child. So encouragement is very, very important. And just the communication and the involvement is very important. What I see in the US, parents' involvement is way stronger than how I was growing up. It was a different system. And it was also a club system. The coaches took care more of regarding duty than here in the US. So I see that you can do a sport without your parent, right? So you have to get a ride and all the logistics have to be handled by the parents. So it's a very important topic, and it has a huge impact on the athletes.
Yeah, and I think what you said earlier, I think you said, self-awareness, right? Being aware as a parent, because you and I have talked about this. We've talked about it on camera. We've talked about it off camera and away from the microphone. But I'm a parent and I'm a mental performance coach to young athletes, right? So like when I'm coaching, I'm the one that's trying to help the parents to get the perspective and see that these are things that may be influencing their child. But as a parent, even though I do this for a living and I'm consulting and counseling parents about how to handle these situations, as a parent, I still feel the feelings that they feel, which is when it's your child and you're spending a lot of time and you're spending a lot of money and you want them to have an experience. I want my children to have an experience that was better than mine, because generationally, you and I didn't have my parents either. They didn't pressure me to play sport. They didn't even care that much about it. They just wanted me to be happy because they had all these other real life challenges to deal with. And now in the world, youth sport is a totally different landscape. It's everybody does it. It's very much about keeping up with the kids around you, the families around you. There's a lot of pressure that way. A lot of times parents don't even realize it, right? I want my child to be able to keep up. I don't want to let them down. I don't want to under-resource them. I don't want to hurt their chances for the long term. And we feel through comparison, not necessarily conscious, but subconscious, of like, I want my child to make sure they have the best chance to succeed. Am I doing as a parent everything I can? Parents a lot of times then transfer that onto their child without even knowing it, and it impacts the relationship. Everybody's doing the best that they can. It's really, really hard, and it's very emotional. That's why having the self-awareness to be able to catch yourself and go, I'm only doing this because I want to help my kid, but maybe it's not helping. Maybe I need to do something different. That's really valuable.
Absolutely, Mike. Everything starts with self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, many times, the parent is not even aware how their words or communication affect the child. So that's why we are here, and we would like to talk about this more in details. And I think what you said also is so true. I think in the US, I think it's sport become a little bit of business. So it's a little bit, I think it changed what it used to be in the past, like 20 years ago, right? So it's a little bit different, and there is more pressure now on kids regarding youth sports. Also, I think in the US it gives a great opportunity to stand out and even get scholarships. So many times parents' motivation can be that, if my child is getting a scholarship, that's a very good thing because their studying is covered as well.
Yeah.
So it can be a very good, not very good, but yes, it can be a strong motivator factor.
100, right. And I think one of the things that comes up quite a bit is, at least in the work that I do with the parents and families that I work with, and maybe you have the same experiences, these are not things that parents are saying explicitly to their child. You need to perform to a certain level. You need to get a scholarship or else, right? It's not like that. But what I've experienced with young athletes is they internalize that. They're not stupid, right? The parents are not telling them, hey, I'm spending this much money on the sport, or they're not saying you need to get a scholarship or you can stop playing. But the kid internalizes that idea that mom and dad are sacrificing a lot. They know it's a lot of money. They don't know how much it is. They know it's a lot of time. They know that there's a lot of stress because of this situation. And a lot of time the kid thinks, like, I want to pay my parents back, right? Not necessarily through dollars, but I want to make sure that they feel like I'm not letting them down and that I'm doing my best to reward them with an outcome, right? Again, might not be explicitly stated by the parent or the child, but the child certainly feels it. And I think the parents feel it, like, am I letting my kid down? Am I giving them every chance to succeed? And then that creates this stress. Like, we want these outcomes. And if this club team doesn't work out, or I don't make the high school team, or I'm not playing as much as I want to, or whatever, like that, those outcomes start to influence the way people behave because it's emotional. It matters. It's important. And so again, it's like being able to self-regulate in those moments and say, hey, yeah, you know what? That outcome, I wish it was different. And yes, it felt really important, but we've got to be able to like take a step back and go, what's the point of doing this? Yes, we want a scholarship. Yes, we want to go to college. Yes, we want to just be really good at what we do. But the lessons that sports teach us, character development, learning how to deal with adversity, even if your child does not make it to that next level, whatever that next level is, there's a lot of value in what they're doing just by learning how to handle some of these things through sport, right? And I've had that experience myself as a parent. So it's very, very emotional, but I think the more aware parents are of it and they start to know these little, I would say tricks, I hate that word, but like nuances of awareness and like knowing what to say and when to say it and how to say it, like those words are really powerful. So like learning how to do that is really, really important.
Absolutely. It's so true that whenever there is financial investment, even though the parent is not saying anything, but the child might already feel that there is some pressure because of that, right? It's not conscious. So it's unconscious. Everything is unconscious. So it's so true. It's very, very important to be aware of these things. And how you said, I totally agree with that, like how sport builds character and life skills. So this is an investment for life. I think when someone is doing any sports and competitive sports, also like learning those skills, and not just physical, but mental skills. And that's what we are helping with, right? So I think it would be also good to talk about how we work with athletes and parents as well. Mike, how do you work with parents?
That's a great question. I make sure that I engage with parents in the context of helping their young person, right? I don't do any sort of explicit parent coaching, right? At least not at this point. I work with just the young athlete. However, all of my coaching packages and my coaching work involves parents, whether it's through formal check-in sessions or it's just informal communication, text messages, emails, phone calls, checking in to understand, right? So I'll use a sports psychology word, that maybe a lot of people aren't familiar with, but I'm very, very adamant about triangulating, right? Incorporating different perspectives, right? Obviously, I'm getting the perspective of the athlete, but I want to understand the perspective of the parent because what they're observing might be different than what I'm hearing from a 15, 16, or 17-year-old athlete. They only see the world through a very specific lens. Parents might say, hey, they're telling you this, but we're seeing this. Now, it's my job to sort of filter through all of that and figure out what the truth is. And maybe I want to go watch the athlete perform, but I'm not there all the time. So I have to rely on parents to a certain extent. If I'm not engaging with them, I'm probably not going to be as effective as I could be if I didn't, right? So I want to be able to kind of get their point of view. And I go out of my way, and maybe because I am a parent, right? But I go out of my way to make sure that I tell parents specifically, you're doing the best that you can, right? It's a hard job. You have a lot of decisions to make. You've got a lot of responsibilities. We don't always do things perfectly. Yes, sometimes do we make decisions and act in a certain way that has a detrimental effect on our children? Yes, we do, because we're human. But our kids are very resilient. They bounce back faster than we do. So the faster you can kind of accept, hey, I made a mistake, I owned it, I apologize, we talked about it, we moved on, then we can also then all move forward together. And I think that's it. I think treating them like humans, listening, understanding. But, I think the hardest part maybe, and hasn't come up directly in our conversation so far, but I think the biggest challenge I have as a coach is being direct with a parent, right? Like I want to be able to tell them, hey, these are the things that I think you should be doing. But I'm very careful about that because it is their child and I'm not there all the time. So I don't want to come off as I know better than them because I might not. I just want to give them the information to make better decisions, take better actions, to be more effective parents. But I also don't want to be the one pointing the finger and saying, oh, you should do this and you should do that. And that was a mistake because it's not that simple, right? So it is a very difficult job. So I try to really be understanding first, and then those things tend to work themselves out if they feel like I have their child's best interest at heart. How about you? Like, how do you work with parents?
So, thanks for asking the question. Usually the parents were the ones who reach me out. So they are sharing their child's challenge or why they want me to work with their child. And when this is happening and I start working with their child, under certain age, right, we can only contact with the parent. So they are our main resource, and they are organizing also the sessions, right? So we are doing it online. So I'm doing sessions with them usually once a week through Zoom. And we are working on different skills that they can use in sports, but in life as well.
Yes.
And helps them. And while we are doing that, I'm always contact with their parents. So the parent is giving me information. It's so true. Sometimes this information is a little bit different from the child's perspective. So it's the best when I can work with both of them, so the athlete and the parent as well. And many times parents are coming to me with questions that, so please tell me how could I help with that regarding my child. So basically giving them guidance to it. It also happened that I gave sessions to both of the parents because they asked me regarding a challenge that how they could handle this situation better. And we did a strategy session with them. I also provided before parents workshops, so that's kind of like also building self-awareness and talking about challenges and giving them immediate tips. Because I think, all the parents are so open and they want to learn, but somebody has to give them also some feedback because they sometimes don't know how to change it or what to do. I think everyone has the motivation, but sometimes the how is a big question, both for the parents and both for the athlete as well. So that's what we are helping with.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard. And especially if you think about the context in which we operate as mental performance coaches, we are only exposed to what's going on a small fraction of the time, right? We have a strategy session, we have a phone call, we're in communication, but we're not really seeing what's happening. We're not seeing the dynamics. So we've got to take what we hear and we observe is limited and then be able to formulate judgments that we think are going to be helpful for that family. And you're right? Like we need that feedback and they need that feedback so that they can go forward and be their best. It's hard sometimes. I guess the question I have for you is, because I'm curious about this, because I experienced this firsthand. Do you have situations where the parents that you're working with aren't as engaged in the process as you'd like or need them to be? Meaning it's hard to get them to engage and you feel like you need them to be more involved?
The parent? No, I never experienced that.
Really?
I worked with always the parents who were really involved in it. So I would say that usually the parents reach me out who were super involved in it and did everything. So I didn't experience that the parent wasn't that motivated. So they were usually very motivated. And also actually what I found useful as well, I even work with a parent, a coach, and an athlete. So, and it's what's very interesting, sometimes there are different perspectives, right? So usually the parent or the coach reach me out, and that's how I start working with the athlete. That's also very interesting because sometimes there is a little bit conflict with with the athlete. So not the athlete, but the coach and the parent. There might be
absolutely
some challenge put in that way regarding communication and playing time and how much the parent is involved in coaching, right? Because some parents like to coach more than they're supposed to be. And also I notice it's also very different here in the US. Many times in youth sports, one of the parents start being the coach for the team, right?
Yes.
In Hungary, it's a little different. So there are coaches and clubs. Usually the coaches are coaching and the parents are not as involved, or they're not allowed to be that involved. And here is a little bit different because of the system is different. So many times the parent sometimes is the first coach, right? Or they are coaching the team because it's voluntary coaching for for a soccer team or a basketball team.
And
Or a baseball team. Right?
I've done all of those things, by the way. And
Oh, you did that. So
oh
you do it
yes, and
as a
actually,
parent.
and I don't want to take us off topic here because I think that particular subject that you just brought up, like the idea that we have parent coaches and the system is different, is a whole nother podcast conversation, right? But one of the reasons I got into mental performance coaching, because before I did, I was coaching my children. And I learned firsthand as a coach that the system was very, very eye-opening. As a coach parent, like I was just there to make sure that the kids were having fun and that they were all participating and that they were growing and developing. And the parents around me who were not volunteering wanted to win more and they wanted their kid to play more. And they didn't want me to be democratic in terms of playing time. And they didn't really care about development. They wanted to win these games that, in my mind, were seemingly not meaningful, other than the fact that if it was meaningful to the kids, it was meaningful to me. But the parents wanted more seriousness. That was what started me down the road of like, hey, maybe there is a need for somebody like us in this process, because parents are so hands-on and they're so passionate and they're so emotional about sports, even at that level, that it becomes personal, right? The coach didn't do this. The coach didn't play my kid. All these things are happening. And it's like, okay, unless we change the system, which is really going to be hard to do, right?
It's not going to happen.
Right. It's not going to happen. So how do we address it from the bottom up or the inside out? That was my thinking, right, with that. So, but I think one of the things that I experience quite a bit in my coaching is that relationship between the family and the coach. Generally the athlete and the coach, but the family's relationship to the coach matters too. We're not playing. My son or daughter is not in a role that we think is suitable for their abilities. It's impacting the future, right? Anxiety about the future. My son or daughter is not playing as much. They're not getting on the field. They're not getting video. They're not getting recognized. And they're going to college in a year or 2 years or 3 years. The coach is standing in the way. Now, that's been one of my biggest responsibilities, is more so than I ever imagined, was helping the families understand the coach has a job to do. You might not agree with it, but they've got responsibilities to the group. They have a job. They want to keep their job. They have preferences and they have a philosophy about the way they want to do things. Sometimes it's going to have a negative impact on an athlete, including yours. Therefore, we need to do something different. Either it's we need to go have the athlete needs to go talk to the coach, which is one element of my coaching. It's a big element. How do we communicate with an adult, even though the adult's not communicating with us? Or we have to make a decision. Do we stay in this program, whether it's a school or a travel club, or do we pick up and move? So understanding, what are my values? What are our family values? What are the priorities? Does it make sense to move? These are things that I never imagined really that I would be working on, but they are a huge part of the work that I do, really just making these choices and decisions and communicating with coaches and things. How much of that is the work comes up in the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. These are very important things. So I think you just highlighted, which is brilliant, is that have to make a decision. Is that team really fits for my child and regarding the needs, what I'm looking for, right? Even motivation as well, because I think in a sports setting, so what is my goal with that? Like, I want just my child just to be involved in sports because these are great, or I want to put my child in a high performance environment, right? So these are important questions to ask, and also whether the culture fits what I'm looking for, because let's be honest, sometimes teams can be very, very different. So sometimes even a solution is not to try to change anything, but find a better fit.
Yeah.
Right? So these are very important questions, and I'm sure everyone who is listening dealing with the same question. So
yeah.
These are important factors.
Yeah. And to come back to the topic of anxiety, right? Like the idea that if I stay here and I don't develop as an athlete, how is it going to impact my future? I look into the future and go, if I stay here and things don't change, I'm not going to play in college. So now I get worried about my future. At the same time, when we think about, am I going to make a decision to go to a new club? We don't know what we're getting into. We have anxiety about that. So we just stay paralyzed, we freeze, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. We freeze up and say, well, I don't know if I want to leave, but I don't know if I want to stay. And then I just do nothing. And now I get anxious versus sometimes we got to make a choice to leave and go to a different environment, even if it's hard, to see if it helps. We have got to take action to not be anxious. That comes with a risk of like, what if I move to a new club and it's actually the wrong decision? Well, you're never really going to know until you do it. So we got to decide what's the most important thing. Let's go. And I do find a lot of value in my work doing that with families like and athletes. Hey, what do you want? Let's clarify your values. Let's clarify what's important. And once you do that and you look at it through that lens, now you can say the most important thing is I want to play in college. Well, that requires me to play more. Okay, if I need to play more and I'm not playing here, that might mean I need to move to a new school or a new club. That's well within your prerogative and your rights to do that, but that also comes with a risk. So being able to like look at that picture, that decision-making picture, assess all the factors, understand the risk and reward, and then help them build the confidence to say, I'm going to go do this. And whatever happens, it's not forever. If I don't like my new club, I can move again. It's not ideal. It happens in college now, right? U.S. athletes are going to college. They pick a school. They transfer. They transfer to the school. They don't like it. They transfer back, or they transfer to a new school. They're looking for that answer, right? Unless we know what we want, we're going to just be bouncing around. So, like, I think not to get too far down the road on this, because I want to try to tie it back to the topic of how do we manage anxiety and, being just uncomfortable with some of these, things that we deal with. It's really about assessing things through a really objective framework and then understanding that I want to take action. And even if there's a poor result from that decision, it's not forever. I can correct it by taking action and doing different things. And it's not the end of the story. It's just part of the story.
Absolutely. So the first step, you need clarity, know what you want, then take actions.
Yeah.
And we help with that, right?
Yeah.
So that's super important. So Mike, tell me like a story when you helped with anxiety. So if you could give an example, so people who are listening would get some insights on that. Like, what are the most common problems, and how, if you could give an example, how did you help to an athlete?
Yeah. I listen, ultimately, anxiety looks different for everybody, right? The symptoms look different. The circumstances are different. But generally speaking, it's generally a fear of an uncertain outcome, a worry about something not working out the way that the athlete or the family wants it to, right? And so one of the things I've been noticing in my work recently is the anxiety comes from the anticipation, right? It's when things are out of an athlete's control, meaning like before a game, the night before a game, and the warm-ups, they're nervous. And that might lead to things like vomiting or muscle tension or like all these physical symptoms that come with it. But once they start to play, the anxiety goes away. Why? Because they have more control in the competition, in the game, than they actually do before it, right? So helping them identify, or I guess first helping them understand the way the brain works, right? Like, hey, we think about things that are going to happen in the future. Our brain wants to make sense of that, right? Like, what's going to happen next? Well, I don't know what's going to happen next. That makes me nervous. And so I start to have these different symptoms, whether it's overthinking or some sort of physical symptom. Okay, we know that it's worried about the future. Let's come back to the present moment, right? Let's start from scratch. Notice my breathing. I'm right here. Notice my body. I'm right here. Think about, what am I going to do when the nerves come before it happens, right? Well, if this happens, what am I going to do? So we start to come up with a plan or a routine to address that. I know you have experience doing that. Certainly I do. But helping them feel more in control, right? Whether it's just grounding in the moment or setting up a strategy or a plan to say, hey, I know I'm going to get nervous. I know why I'm going to get nervous, but I also know what I'm going to do before it happens so that I don't have to worry as much about what I'm going to do when it happens, right? And I think that process looks different for everybody because the age matters, right? Developmentally, I've dealt with 10-year-olds who feel that way and 16-year-olds that feel that way and 21-year-olds that deal that way. They think differently. They have different backgrounds. They have different stories, helping them find the way that works for them, but then helping them understand, like, this is why it's happening and these are the options. Let's try this. Let's experiment with this new thing, whether it's a breathing technique or a mindfulness technique or a reset. Let's experiment to see what works for you so that you can take back some of that control. And I find generally that that makes a lot of sense to them. It doesn't always work right away, but it makes sense. And I think that helps them just in that exercise of making sense of why they get anxious and what it means and how they could potentially deal with it, even if they don't know how to do it yet and execute under pressure, makes them feel more at ease. They makes them calm down, right? So like, these are things that I'm always trying to do. It's a process. Like, we can't make someone's anxiety go away altogether. And certainly it takes time to find a strategy that's going to work. But if they can be patient and accept it and work through the process and feel in control of that, that's a great way to start dealing with anxiety for athletes.
Absolutely. So it's important to know the roots, right? Where is this coming from and why is this happening? And that's what's important to identify. And we help with that for athletes. And also then giving them tools how they can handle these situations. And one of the most important thing is focus on what they can control and they can control the routine, right?
Yes.
So like a breathing routine you mentioned, also like mistake rituals if they are in a game situation, but if it's a performance anxiety, a state anxiety, which is normal, right? So when there is an important event, everyone has a state anxiety, and the problem happens when it's too high. When it's too high, that's when a child might experience that, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm vomiting, and because the pressure is, or the anxiety is too high. So that's what we help with. But on the other hand, if somebody is too relaxed, it's also not good, because the athlete might feel sluggish and slow because the motivation is not there because they are too relaxed. So there is an optimal energy level. And so, Mike, you mentioned that some athletes might experience like vomiting or extreme anxiety, and a parent might worry like, this is very extreme. So tell me more about that. Where do you think is the line when it's too extreme, and what they should do regarding that?
Yeah, and I've had this experience recently, so I can speak to that. I think the first thing that I might suggest is checking the box of, is there something physically wrong, right? Is there a medical condition, right, underlying, right? Is it there's something wrong and they're throwing up because they have something physically wrong, or they're completely healthy, we got checked out. The nerves, the vomiting is a response to the anxiety, because that's also normal, right? Like, it's not ideal, it's not preferred, but sometimes our body does not cooperate. The nerves are so overwhelming that it needs to vomit to get rid of them. And then once the athlete vomits, like in this case that I had recently with an 11-year-old boy, once he vomited, he was like, okay, I'm good, right? But it was all that anticipation leading up to it. I think once we've kind of checked the medical box and we know it's just nerves, I think it's trying to understand why, right? Like, what's that underlying reason why this young person's getting so nervous? And this kind of comes back to the sort of parenting context conversation, right? I can only go by what the people I'm working with are telling me. But like, very early on, I was able to sort of sense that the parents really weren't the ones that were at least explicitly putting the pressure on the child. It wasn't language, it wasn't actions. The parents weren't, screaming and yelling and demanding performance. It wasn't that. It was a young boy who loved his sport. He loved soccer, and he really wanted to do well. And he wanted to do well so much that it actually led him to vomit. But he also said, I don't like it. I don't want to feel this way. Not only because he didn't like the feeling of physically vomiting, but because it was also something that was impacting his coach's view of him, right? His opinion of him. So he was motivated to change. So then it was, okay, what do we do now? Let's try to figure out what's next to try to address that, right? And in this case, it was simple. Let's just work on breathing to see if you can incorporate some sort of breathing when those nerves start, which for him was in the car on the way to a game. Okay, my stomach started to rumble a little bit. My throat started to tighten. When you notice that, you become aware, let's try a couple of deep breaths this way, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Let's see what happens. And then when he came back, he said, hey, you know what? I felt better. I could feel my throat open up. My stomach wasn't as nervous, and it helped me not to vomit. So he got some really positive results very early on. Then it was like, okay, that's proof. Let's keep going. He threw up again on the next attempt, right? The next game. Okay, that's fine too. Let's figure out maybe there's something we can do differently. So we go through this process of trial and error, but really helping him understand, like, hey, like, let's try to figure out where this is coming from, try to make sense of it, and then help them try something that's going to make it go away. And then if it doesn't, we keep going. We try to figure out that answer, right? So like, I know you've had this experience before working with young clients as well. So like, what's been the underlying reason, or in those cases, like what's been the reason why those athletes have felt such extreme anxiety?
Yes, so this is a great question, and it's also important to differentiate, I think, state and trait anxiety.
Yeah.
So state anxiety means when someone is really anxious right before an event, and it's normal. And trait anxiety means that someone is always very nervous, so it's a little bit neurotic. So I think that's an important differentiation. And for an athlete, when somebody has a state anxiety, that's totally normal, and especially before an important tournament or before an important event. So that's normal. That happens a lot. And also I work with athletes who were very nervous, and that's why they couldn't perform their best in a tournament. So they did well in a training, but not in a tournament setting. So we talked a little bit about before that there is an optimal state, which means that somebody in the zone or flow, so when they can perform their best. And when it's too high, that's when anxiety happens. It means that someone's palm is sweating, the heart is beating too fast. Basically, it's the movements becomes harder. So there's a freeze, they might feeling of freeze. And the first step is being aware of that. And what you also mentioned, what you did is using pre-performance routines. So it means that an athlete, what they do before every competition, right before their event, and it can be very, very helpful. So that's how I also work with athletes, that we created a pre-performance routine which involved breathing, doing circle breathing, deep breathing, because breathing can release the anxiety. So if somebody is doing deep breathing exercise, more oxygen goes in their blood, so they can relax. And also shallow breathing, also not good, because that also causing anxiety. So focusing on a slower deep breathing exercise right before their event was very helpful. Also what's happening in their head is also very important. So using affirmations and before their event or tournament, it's super helpful, because also their thoughts affect the body. So if the kid is having so much worry, anxiety, they have negative thoughts, that's really affecting the body. So there is also two components. There are symptoms regarding cognitive anxiety, which means that somebody is having too many thoughts and negative thoughts. And somatic anxiety means that, for example, somebody is vomiting and having really cold hands and very strong heartbeat, faster heartbeat. So you have different techniques how you can help with that, and we already talked about that. Visualization is also a great tool that I use with athletes. and listening to music beforehand. These are great tools. So basically visualizing their success and a calm environment, or a great performance right before, or how they are overcoming these challenges when they step on the court. This is very good. And one of the things I think important to cover also, how a parent can help before, right? Before the tournament or race. So basically giving support to your child and not focusing on the results. Very helpful. So focus on the process and making sure that you're highlighting that you're so happy to watch your kid, and highlight the importance of having fun while they are competing, and not putting any pressure on the child is important. So creating an optimal motivational climate can be very helpful for the child, and using even humor, and doing also some routines. So we talked about that routines are very important, and any kind of routine can be good, because that's what the child can control, and also you can control. And sometimes it also happens that the parent is even more nervous, right?
Yes.
Than the child. So just be aware of that. That's
Yes.
also affecting your child.
It's a great point.
Even though you're not saying anything, but they
They can
observe
sense
your
it.
nervousness, and it's affecting
Yeah.
their energy level. Right?
100%. And I think that's a really great point, which is your child can sense when you're nervous, right? Like, and they pick up on that. Even if you don't say anything, they can kind of see it, right? So as a parent, being aware is critical. And I think, there's a lot of super things that you just said there, right? When we think about motivational climate, right, we think about part of that is feeling autonomous, feeling as the young athlete, I feel like I'm in control of my experience. As a parent, I can speak firsthand, and having made this mistake, making this mistake all the time instinctively, is rather than telling our child what to do, make a statement or give them direction, ask them a question, right? What do you want to do today? What do you want to get out of the game today? What's your goal for the day? What do you want to accomplish, right? Because now you're asking them to think about what they want, then they're going to go make a choice to go do that thing when they play, versus go do that. Even if I say to them, go have fun, smile and have fun, they may not feel like smiling and having fun. They may not think this is an event that's going to make them want to smile and have fun. Maybe they're really serious about their sport. They don't want to have fun. They want to go compete. Now, do I agree that that's helpful? Not necessarily. But if they feel like they're in control, and they feel like this is the choice I'm going to go make to do this in the game, it's probably going to give them a better sense of like, hey, I'm motivated to go do this because it's my choice. It's my decision, versus my mom or my dad or even my coach told me to do another thing that they're always telling me to do, and it doesn't line up with what I want, and now I'm just resistant to it. So for me, when people ask me, what advice do you give parents, generally speaking, ask more questions is probably number one at the top of the list. Ask more questions and make less statements. Because when you ask your child a question, now you're forcing them to think about what they want, versus you're implying, when I make a statement and tell them what to do, that they need to go execute on that statement, or else there's some negative consequence, even if that's not the way it's intended. So that would be certainly my advice in terms of giving them that feeling of autonomy that's going to motivate them to go do what they need to go do in a positive way.
Absolutely. So ask questions. I also think that asking too many questions, it's not good, but some questions, that's, I think,
oh yeah, I agree.
Good, right?
Yeah.
So don't ask too many questions, but some questions. I think that's very.
And if I had to pick,
helpful.
and if I had to pick one question, right? And
what
I would
be your question?
As a coach, I use this question, and as a parent, right, is what's your intent? Like, what do you want to do in the game today? Right? So now you're actually asking one question that's open-ended that says, okay, I want you to think about, where's my direction? What's my purpose for this particular game? They've got to think about narrowing down their intention. today I want to go play aggressively. Today I want to go do this. Okay, they're making that choice. If I asked a child, my child or a child that I work with, a young athlete, what do you want to do today? I want to score a goal. Then there might be a follow-on of how are you going to score that goal? What are you going to do that's in your control that's going to allow you to score that goal? Because we know that scoring a goal is out of your control. And if you don't do it, that's going to also cause you maybe to get caught up in the missed expectations is going to lead to disappointment versus, okay, I want to score. That's a good goal. What are we going to do underneath it to make sure we're taking the actions we need to score? And if we don't score, at least we could say we did all those things that just didn't work out.
Yes, and I think it's a very important thing to highlight that winning is in the athlete control. And I see that so many times. If you ask a kid, what do you want? What is your intent for this game? I want to win, right? So I think that's a very, I mean, especially if someone is competitive, very common answer. But asking, okay, so tell me more about what you have to do if you want to win. What are the steps? And also just highlight, because I think kids are not aware of that. Winning is not in their control. So talking about a little bit about, yes, more about the process and setting up some process goals, right? And highlighting that process goals means that, or performance goals means that focusing on the effort, focusing on if it's a team sport, like how you give a good pass, right, to your teammate, and focusing on what they can control regarding the game. And also after the game, what the parent is doing is also very important, right? So tell me more about your advice. What is your advice for parents after the game?
I think this one is really tricky, difficult. And I think it's oversimplified, right? My personal opinion is we hear a lot about the ride home, right? Quote unquote. What should that look like? I think as a parent, my first thing is I know my children better than anybody. So I don't want to come in and certainly, generally speaking, I don't want a parent, myself included, to start nitpicking and breaking down and analyzing performance and criticizing right after a game, right? I don't want to do that. I want to follow my kids' lead. If they want to talk about it, I talk about it. If they don't want to talk about it, I try not to talk about it, right? Sometimes that's hard. If I'm going to be critical of a child after a game, again, maybe I'm speaking as a parent now. If I'm being critical of my child or I have feedback for them, it almost always centers around the controllables, right? Your effort didn't look good. Your response to that mistake, your body language wasn't good. It was things that they can control that maybe that's my bias as a parent. I feel like that's stuff that I want them to be able to do. Maybe that's not the right way to handle it. But I think to go back to the beginning of my answer, which is we know our children better than anybody. I think you got to use your instinct. But if your instinct is to criticize the performance based on results or execution or mechanics, as soon as you get in the car, that's probably not the best way to go. The best way to go is, hey, good job out there today, and follow their lead. If they don't want to say anything, they put their headphones on and they don't want to talk to you, I follow their lead. When they're ready, they will. If there's something I feel like I need to say, maybe I give it a little bit of space. But then if it's any sort of criticism is, you could have done this, or like, I ask a question, what do you think you could have done? I played like crap today. What do you think you could have done better then? Answer it, And so I think it's a lot harder than we make it out to be. But I think, when I mean by that is like, I think we oversimplify this car ride home. Like it should be these things. I think it should be whatever works for your family. But I think being hypercritical of outcomes in that moment is probably not the right way to go about it. It's give them a little space, ask a question. If there's feedback, maybe even ask them, can I give you my feedback? Which for a parent is really uncomfortable, right? I'm your parent. You're my child. I should be able to tell you whatever I want to tell you and have no consequence. I don't think that's true. Can I give you a suggestion? Can I give you feedback?
So ask permission to ask a question.
Yes.
Right? I think that's also asking a permission, because it's very important. And how you said that everyone is different. So some child likes to get feedback right after or even later, right? So that's why also good to ask permission from your kid, because they also feel, it's right for them. And a delayed feedback can be also a good feedback, because I noticed that some kids like open to feedback right after, or the same day. Other kids like later, right? Some feedback, especially if it depends also, it's a win or a loss, right? And the other thing I would like to highlight, I'm sure that the sandwich technique. So Ken Ravizza, right? So I think it's also very good feedback, and let's share with the audience what is the sandwich technique. Is that when you give feedback, you always start with a good thing, right? So you start, when you want to give a feedback to your child, start with a good thing that they did well, then go into some constructive feedback. Because it's perceived differently when you just jump into a feedback.
Glad you brought that up. I think that's a great point, right? Like, start with the good. That opens the door potentially, maybe not, but more likely to be more open to the more constructive feedback, and then close it up with, I'm happy to have watched you play, or something positive, right? So that that constructive criticism gets sandwiched up around good stuff. Absolutely. Here's the other thing that I would say to parents, or I would suggest to parents, and I would say this, is think about how you would feel if you walked out of a meeting and your boss stopped you and said, "That was terrible. Why did you say that?" You would not be happy, right? Just because we're adults and they're kids doesn't mean they're going to like it when the wound is raw and we stick our finger in it, right? Like, nobody wants that, right? So think about how it would feel for you if it were to happen to you in a professional environment, or if your mother or father, criticized you about your parenting, right? "Oh, you should do this and you should do that. And when you were young, I did this." No parent wants to hear that from their mother or father, right? So it's the same idea, right? Like, we forget that we don't like that as well in most cases. We don't want to hear it, right? We're open to that criticism or feedback later, but in that moment, we're like, "I don't want to hear it from you. Leave me alone. Like, I'm doing the best I can." So I think sometimes as parents, we struggle to empathize with our children, I guess is a better way to say it, right?
But why? Because emotionally, everyone is so involved.
Yeah. Right. And whether we are conscious of the question, right? We've talked about being conscious of things, whether we're conscious of it or not, and usually we're not. I think the underlying feeling for a parent is, am I good enough? Am I doing a good enough job with parenting? Whether, did I give my kid the tools to be successful in today's game? Or am I good enough to be able to sit with my child's discomfort? Or do I know how to soothe them or make them feel better? Or, like, we're always, as parents, questioning ourselves about, like, am I doing good enough? Am I doing a good job? Could I have done something differently? And we feel however we feel, guilty, ashamed, angry, frustrated, whatever. And then that comes out in the interaction, right? So being able to identify our own emotions as parents and why we're feeling that way and what am I feeling? And yes, I'm feeling this way and I want to make it feel better for me, doesn't mean I should open my mouth and then express it to my child because I want to take the control back and control the situation. That's hard. That takes practice as a parent to be able to bite your tongue and be like, I want to say this, but I'm not, because I need to not put it onto them yet. Maybe later, but not right now. That's really hard. And that's just any relationship that we enter into as adults. It just so happens that the parent-child relationship is just so important to everybody, right? And sports are really important to everybody for whatever reason, right? And so there's a lot of meaning, and there's a lot of questioning, and there's a lot of doubt, and there's a lot of anxiety about the outcomes and what it means, not only about sport performance, but like how we show up and who we are as people. That leads to an emotionally charged environment. When we're aware of it, we can put our finger on it and we know what we're going to do before we do it. It's the same as performing on the field. Parents are performers. Hey, I know I'm going to take a deep breath before I open my mouth because that's going to help me stay calm and not say something I'm going to regret.
Absolutely. And just remember, everyone remember that your child can sense your energy and your
Hmm.
nervousness, and they can pick up on it, even
Yeah.
though you're not saying anything. Sometimes some kids are about to manage their parents' anxiety, right?
Hmm.
So that sometimes also happens. So it's very important to have self-awareness, and everything is normal. And I know everyone wants
Hmm.
to do their best, and we are humans, right?
Hmm.
And everyone makes mistakes, whether parenting, whether the kids. It's all about after acknowledging it and after basically changing whatever has to be changed. But everything starts with self-awareness. And I also work with, just to give an example, like regarding many times the kid really wants to satisfy the parents. So I work with a tennis player, 12, 13-year-old tennis player, and she looked out after every mistake and looked
Hmm.
at one of the parents. And because of that, like she couldn't really concentrate. So just also building self-awareness for the kids as well. They have to play for themselves and also focus on what they can control, and also
Hmm.
educating the parents about it, like not giving emotional reactions and getting upset, right?
Hmm.
But rather than staying neutral and even not showing emotional responses to their mistakes, because they can observe it. Basically, it's affecting the whole dynamics and it's affecting the kids' game on the court. So what we did, this particular
Hmm.
player, we created a performance routine for her on the court, so a mistake ritual. So after every mistake, she had to go to the fence and take a deep breath and basically resetting her emotions and focus on the next point and not to look at the parent,
Hmm.
right? And the parent also changed their behavior by staying neutral and also going in a place that they don't have to have always an eye contact on the
Yeah.
court. So these are tiny changes, but can make a huge difference. Because of this work, basically the player could focus more on her game and also being non-judgmental with themselves. And the parent can help also a lot with that, and building like on the court rituals, like mistake ritual,
Hmm.
and equipping with them, like even just focus on their breathing,
Hmm.
and also creating positive affirmations such as
Hmm.
it's okay, move to the next point, are super helpful. And physical rituals as well, like using the towel and resetting themselves.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious in that example, right? Like, was it something that both the parent and the child were aware was happening? Meaning, like, what was the dynamic between them? Like, obviously, the athlete got in the habit of looking over at her parent, but like when you started working with them, did they know that was a problem, or did you uncover that in your work? Like, did you learn that that was something that was happening and they didn't even realize it was going on?
The mom told me that, oh, she's always looking at me, and
Okay.
also the child couldn't handle that well, her emotions. So the mom was aware of that,
Okay.
and the player was also aware of that, but she was not doing it consciously, right? So
Gotcha.
she was doing it unconscious. So that's we worked on, why is this happening? And also it's kind of like a pressure, right? Because she wanted to make her happy. So that's like something that it happens a lot in any sports, that I think it's so normal. When a kid is making a mistake, immediately look outside, right, to the parent.
Yeah.
So that happens a lot. So that was unconscious, but the parent was also, aware of that. And the player, she couldn't handle her emotions that well. And she was aware that she's looking outside, but she was not doing it on purpose. So she was
Hmm.
looking for tools, what she can do in the situation. And also we worked on basically creating her mission statement, why she's playing and playing for herself.
Yeah. Sounds great.
No, I think we covered lots of things, and
Yes.
I'm so glad that we covered so many different topics. And thank you so much for being here, and we could co host this podcast. So I was thrilled to hear your insight on the topic.
And the same with you. And I think there's so much you can talk about when it comes to this subject, right? And so really trying to talk about all the things that matter, but also trying to keep it as simple as possible is a challenge. So I'm glad that we had to have a conversation around it. And hopefully, this was helpful for whoever listened.
Yes, absolutely. I hope it was helpful for the listeners. And if you have any questions, we are here for you. Please reach out. And have everyone a fantastic day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you got a lot of value from this episode. Thank you for listening. I have included a link in the description below where you can get a free copy of my high performance ebooks to help you to take your performance to the next level. Until next time, take care.